Good morning. Welcome to House Talk with Wally Kerr. I'm Dave McKay, joined by Wally Kerr from Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty Kerr team. Wally, good morning.
Good morning. I'm in good shape because I've got my coffee this morning, and it's always great to spend time with you.
Absolutely. And you can spend time with us. You can listen. You can participate if you want to. You can text Wally at 405-330-3000. Again, you could text him or just give him a call if you want to chat. If you have a couple of questions, he's real easy to talk to.
Dave, I'm a lot easier to talk to than I am to look at, right? We're sitting in the studio here together, and unfortunately, you have to look at me, but the listener only has to hear my voice. No, seriously, maybe you're in a real estate transaction right now. My agents that work on my team have constant questions every day, and part of this is knowledge and experience and me having the answers for them. Maybe you're in a real estate transaction right now or contemplating making an offer on a home. Maybe you have questions and you just want to bounce that off of somebody. So it's not an obligation to do business with me, just to ask a question, whatever you're comfortable with. You can text me or call me, either one, 330-3000. I'll start answering those questions as soon as our show's over, Dave.
Great. So let's jump right on into it. Something that we kind of touched the surface the last couple of weeks, where for quite a few years, the home market was this nice little gradual incline. We were kind of moving up. And then as COVID hits, we were all over the place. And it was different industries, not just the home market, but it seems like home buying and selling was the wild, wild west the last 3 or 4 years. What do you see in the short term now for people that are maybe getting interested in buying or selling? How's the market?
You know, we might have the wild, wild west again this year, Dave.
Okay.
It's amazing. So normally this time of year, housing inventory goes up. Not as many people typically buy in January, February, March. The traditional buying season was always April, May, June, July. But right now, do you know the inventory is going down? This is normally when the inventory goes up. Here's what I see more than anything is some of those people that were trying to buy last year, maybe even the year before, below about $300,000, they're back in the market again. Maybe they didn't buy a home last year, Dave. Maybe they didn't buy one the year before. Maybe they went back and rented, and they just said, this is all kind of crazy. I don't want to have to compete for these homes.
Yes. Don't
want to have to give above listed price. We had buyers that, in some cases, despite really great multiple offer strategies, we had buyers that just missed out because the buying got so crazy, like you said, the wild, wild west. I kind of see that happening again already. Inventory's falling. People are back in the market. Under 300,000 approximately, give or take, is really, really hot. And it's just the reverse of what I normally see. I can see that normally April, May, June, July are the busiest months, and it's like it's already started. So if you're thinking about buying, it's going to get busier typically in the spring. And Dave, it's because of spring break. You know, your son,
yes.
You always he was a great student. I know that. We know each other. I know he was a great student. So you kind of want to give him a break. So you plan a trip, and you start right there at the start of spring break. Maybe you're gone all week. Then when you come back, you're kind of getting things ready for school again. Then he's got a really busy week at school, and you've got a busy week at work the next week because you were off, right?
Yes.
So after spring break, about 2 weeks later is when the market typically really picks up.
Okay.
I know that demand is going to be there. I know there's going to be people that will get past spring break and think to themselves, are we going to move this year or not? And there's a lot of that will happen in April, May, June. If you're thinking about buying, I don't think I'd hesitate right now. I don't see any big fluctuations. They're going to occur inside the marketplace as far as interest rates. I don't think they're going to dive down. I don't think there's going to be any benefit to waiting 60 or 90 days. And if you're thinking about selling a home, the same way. The demand is there. Now, I'd say, Dave, bigger homes, let's say 400,000, 500,000, 600,000 and above, that demand will probably peak more after school's out. Doesn't that make sense? Isn't that natural?
Yes. Yeah, you don't want to move during the school year.
Right. So bigger homes, in a lot of cases, there's kids involved in the move. Move the kids during the summer, make a purchase in April, May, June. The kids are out of school. It's already hard enough to be the new kid on the block, much less be the new kid at school. So, but boy, for anybody thinking about buying or selling, let's say for sure under 400,000, but really for sure under 300,000, I don't think I'd wait to buy. I don't think there's a reason to wait because I think the market's going to get even hotter as we go into the spring. And I don't think if I were going to sell that I would wait. because there will be some more inventory that comes on the market. If you ask why, because more of those people that get past spring break will say, okay, now let's put our home on the market and make a move this year. It's like you said, the wild, wild west. I don't know that it will be wild, but the writing is on the wall right now that it looks like it's going to be a really strong real estate market again in the spring and summer of 2023.
So it sounds like it's a good time for everybody. As more people start getting interested in buying homes, that means they're now going to have a home they're going to put on the market. So that means there's more homes to look at. And then, of course, we always have the home builders that are trying to fill that category as well with new homes. So those start to come in.
When they're doing that, they are building like crazy right now. And I'll be honest with you, Dave. At the end of last year, when things got slower, that was the time when interest rates pushed above 7%. And everybody was like, wow, wait a minute, these rates were 3, now they're 7. Boy, that shut our market down in November. November, December was terrible locally in the real estate industry because it shut it down. The Fed achieved what they wanted to do. And I saw the builders throwing all this inventory on the ground, and I thought, man, maybe they're making a mistake here and building too many brand new homes. You know what? 54% of the homes within a 30-mile radius of downtown Oklahoma City for sale in the MLS right now are new homes. And I think that inventory needs to be there, and I think the builders are going to have another big summer, because if you can't find the home you want, you're going to go to a builder. If you think you're going to have to pay a premium to buy an existing home, and you may want an existing home in a specific neighborhood or a specific school district, but I think a lot of people will turn to new homes, and I think the builders are going to have another big year.
So we did have the Wild Wild West for a couple of years, and you said that it's still a little bit like that. So my thinking could be, okay, so do you see it not slowing down? Could rates start to go down a little bit? There's more homes for people to look at, therefore more options for people now ready to buy.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I do believe we will return to more of a normal market. I am hearing some lenders and some people in the know say that they think that rates will get down back in the 5s. Everything I see this week is rates are in the low to mid 6s, low to mid 6% interest rate range. So let's say 6% to whatever, 6.5, mid 6.5. A lot of that depends on credit score. The better your FICO score is, the better rate you get because you're a better credit risk. 15-year loans, the rate is always cheaper than it is for a 30-year. Generally speaking, about 3/8 of a percentage point less. So if a rate today was 6.25 for a 30-year, based on your credit and the price range home you were going to buy, a 15-year rate would be just below 6. It'd be around 5 7/8. Okay. So there's a savings there. But in a direct answer to your question, yeah, we can't be in a crazy market like this forever. Inventory will come back up. The builders will build enough brand new homes. The market won't be really, really busy like it is right now forever. And we're just so low on existing inventory. But I don't think it'll correct this year, Dave. And depending on what happens this year, and if it's really busy throughout the end of the year, don't believe there's going to be any rise in the interest rates. If that will help people's, opinion of the market a little bit, I don't see any reason for a big rise in rates. Certainly the Fed said over the last week that they are slowing the rise in their rate. I think here are my recommendations. First, if you're a buyer, to win a home in this marketplace, Dave, it's been hard. How many friends do you know or workers, co-workers that have bought or sold over the last 2 or 3 years, and they tell you the crazy stories about how much they got, how much they paid, how many offers they made? You've certainly had.
You're right. I've had several of them, and they've all had at least one interesting story to tell from each transaction. Yes.
My recommendation would be, if you're a buyer, call me or touch base with me. We've got 21 multiple offer strategies that we have formulated over the last 3 years. If you find a home you want, you and I talked about that last week. You said, hey, we found the home we want. What do we do now? So you better have some good strategies in place so that you don't get beat out. We are already seeing, with my team over the last 10 days, multiple offers coming in on properties at the right price point. And so I can already see, again, the writing on the wall. Text me if you need help in the current market. If you're thinking about buying and you'd like to know more about some multiple offer strategies, I can help there. If you're a seller, here'd be my best advice, Dave. I would have a home ready to go on the market by April 1st.
Okay.
That's just after spring break, about 2 weeks after. I can write a written guarantee that I'll sell somebody's home or buy it myself. So that's also a dilemma for a lot of people. They go out, they go to an open house, they fall in love with the home, it's in an area they like. Their first dilemma is, wow, I'm probably going to get beat out if I go write the seller a contingent offer that says I have to sell my home first.
Yes.
So that's why Cindy and I started our guaranteed sell program in 2007.
And that takes a lot of pressure off.
It does.
That makes you really feel a little bit more at ease when you start looking at homes.
It does, and I think the real key is what you're trying to do is pacify the seller. If the seller has 4 offers that are solid and somebody doesn't have to sell a home, but you write an offer and you say, I need to sell my home first, your offer doesn't get considered.
Yes.
So my guaranteed sell program can help solve that dilemma. Your home sold guaranteed at a price we agree to up front, or I'll buy your home for cash in an agreed period. So you can, if you need information on that, do me a favor, and Dave, listeners could just text me at 330-3000. That's our text number. You can just text the words written guarantee, and I will mail you information on that program. Just text me written guarantee, those words, and your address, and I'll send you a report on Monday.
Okay, so you mentioned how good the market is right now for someone that's wanting to sell their home. Do you have any tips for someone to give them an edge in selling their home?
Sure. Let's talk about some tips that would be along the lines of property preparation, because getting a home ready and the presentation is important, right?
Yes.
And then maybe also some tips in negotiating, because that's a big part of it too. We talk about all these potential multiple offers on the same property. And so maybe you see an offer, maybe you're the seller, Dave, and you look and say, wow, I really like this one offer here from this buyer. They've got a really strong pre-approval letter, and I'm sitting looking at the offer with my realtor. I'm looking at the offer, and it all just looks really good. It looks like a closing date maybe I could work with. And I like the fact that they're paying their own closing costs, and they've made me a good price offer. And it looks like they've got a down payment. So part of this in 27 tips for selling, which I've got a free report on that. We'll talk about that later.
Okay.
Let me just share a few tips. So the first thing I'd say is when you're negotiating, keep your reasons for selling your home to yourself. I mean, the first thing you'd never want to tell someone, I hate to ever have to talk about this, but it happens a lot in our marketplace, and people are going through a divorce. And so you don't ever want to tell a buyer, I'm going through a divorce, because it sounds like a fire sale. Right?
Sure, yeah.
I'm going through financial difficulties and I really need to sell my home. Boy, doesn't that kind of sound like a fire sale?
Yes.
All of a sudden? Some of the better answers are, we need a different home. We need a larger home. Okay, I wouldn't say we need to move down because the payments are too much for us. Again, that sounds like a fire sale, right?
Yes.
Okay. You don't want to say I'm behind on my payments, although there's a certain disclosure that's required by the state of Oklahoma if you're in foreclosure, but not just if you're behind on payments. So the point is, keep your reasons to selling to yourself, if you're a seller, to keep your price as high as possible.
And I'm an oversharer. So, my wife told me just keep my lip zipped and just show the home. Matter of fact, she would rather do the talking than me. But that's a really good point, because that is just dollars leaving your wallet. Anytime you give any indication of, I have to move it, I have to get out of here, we really want to move into this other house, which, by the way, sidebar, the house that you helped us buy 7 years ago, I know that family had some urgency, and I think we were able to capitalize on that and make a good deal. So the selling for them, it maybe didn't pan out, that they let some of those things become public, that they needed to get out of that house.
It makes a difference on what you get on your bottom line. And it's the reason that some people shouldn't try to sell their own home, because if they're going to show it on their own, a seller's going to get hit with questions from the buyer just like that. Why are you selling? Well, you better have yourself coached on that.
Yes.
Because you may end up with the wrong answer. And then the other issue is when people are inside with say, a realtor, and they're looking at a property, maybe the decor is not exactly to the buyer's liking. Maybe it's paint. Maybe it's got some wallpaper. Maybe there are things that they would want to change. They want to ask those things to the agent they're looking at the home with. For a seller, that's pretty uncomfortable. To hear someone say, boy, I don't really like that wallpaper. Their decor is not very good. And I think Okies are nice people in general. Don't you?
Yes.
I mean, I think
Yeah,
people
absolutely.
are nice. You know, it's
Yes.
pretty hard to walk in when a seller is sitting in the living room and somebody says, I don't like the decor. First thing that's going to happen there is the seller's going to probably feel a little bit defensive
Yes.
and think, I'm just not going to negotiate at all. I don't like these people. So it's
Yes.
pretty tough to have to answer some of the questions that a buyer will ask. It's also hard to create the same amount of demand for your home. For instance, I can create so much more marketing and demand for a property that honestly, in this kind of market, I could take a good home and get multiple offers for it and get the seller enough money to not only get the price they want, but to also pay the brokerage fees that are involved
Okay.
in a market this strong. I recommend, if you're going to sell, one of the first things to do is to do some home shopping on your own. Put on your buyer goggles. You know, we call them the buyer goggles. Go online.
Okay.
Try to remove yourself from your home for a minute. Go in and say, I'm going to price my home at 3.25. So I'm going to run into realtor.com or Zillow, and I'm going to look online and see what's available between $300,000 and $350,000. Dave, everybody thinks their home is the best home on the market.
Yes.
Okay? Don't you? Don't you feel like you've got a great
100%.
home? And
But
I
you
feel
wanna
like I
start-
own a great
You want to
home.
start doing it's comparison shopping. And
Yes.
you're doing exactly what you're saying. You find the price point that you think you want to list your home. Great point, because then you start looking at these homes and you're like, wow, that's a lot for the money, or it's not really what I was thinking, so maybe I need to, kind of move mine a little bit. So that's a great point.
You can do that on open houses. People say, what should I do on the inside of my home as far as colors? Or should I do this or should I do that? And often I'll recommend that they just walk through some builder homes. Go walk through what the builders are doing, because they're researching and doing the things that consumers like. Paint colors, finishes, some of these things we've seen over the years now with the whiter or grayer paints, the barn doors on the inside, the appointments that they use on bathroom vanities and inside kitchens. So as opposed to trying to guess if you want to do any updating to your home before you put it on the market, go do some comparison shopping and go walk through some of the brand new builder homes and see what those look like.
Because I'm an Oklahoman and I'm a nice guy, if there's a little issue about something here or there, and it's not cosmetic, something that I could just paint over or whatever, and we've gone through certain things just to overlook and don't worry about that, and certain things that we need to fix. If there's something kind of behind the scenes, is honesty the best policy? If I kind of disclose something up front, is that good? Or
Yes. So if you're going to go buy, let's say you were going to buy a car from a friend, and you said, hey, can you tell me if there's any issues with your car? Have you ever had to have any major repairs? They say, yeah. Hey, Dave, I kept service invoices, and I had a little oil pump problem years ago, and I had a warped brake rotor, and I had to take it in for service. And so when your friend grabs a folder of invoices, it says, let me share with you exactly what I've done to this car since I've owned it over the last 4 years. And your first thought is, wow, he's really being honest with me. I trust this guy. I think
yes,
I'm happy to do business with him. And so if I'm a seller, first of all, there are some legal obligations to disclose problems that you know of to stay out of issues with the Oklahoma Real Estate Commission.
okay,
So that's called disclosure. And a seller today, when they sell a home, it's called a residential property condition disclosure statement. That's a lot of words. It just means tell me what's wrong with the home. So yeah, I think that if you established a basis with your friend, let's say he pulls out all the invoices and he says, Dave, I'll sell you the car for $14,500. Maybe I could come off a little bit. And you think, I like the honesty here. I feel like he's been very, very forthcoming with me.
Sure, yes.
So I'm going to give him his money. And so I think it's the same way in selling a home. Tell people what you know about your property, and you're more likely to make a new friend, to be at closing, shaking hands, exchanging telephone numbers, and saying, I am so glad you bought my property, and I hope that your family loves it as much as my family did. And if you ever have any questions, here's my cell phone number, and give me a call.
Okay, so we started with, I think the first tip was, don't tell them why I'm selling the home. Is there certain circumstances that I'm picking up on the buyer wanting to buy my home that's still going to give me another competitive edge? What are some of the things that can give me an edge that way if we flip it, the knowledge from the buyer now?
So a buyer might come in and say, Mr. Seller, Dave, you're selling your home, and I've got an offer on my property, and I really have to close in 35 days. Could you make that happen? And when a buyer starts saying those words, they're asking you to help them, and you look and say, wow, 35 days, that's pretty fast. I got to clean out the attic and clean out the garage and find a place to go. So I don't know, that's pretty fast. But if you like this buyer, they've got a good pre-approval letter, good down payment, their home's under contract, they've got a strong contract there, you probably want to try to accommodate that buyer. Let's go to another example. A lot of veterans here in Oklahoma City, right?
Yes.
A lot of military personnel. Tinker Air Force Base, lots and lots of employees, past veterans. So very often, veterans are appreciated by our country and our government in the fact that they don't have to make a down payment. They can buy a home and use what they call their VA bill with zero down.
Okay.
That's a gift from our government saying thank you for serving our country. They pay no PMI, no private mortgage insurance. Mm-hmm. Their loan is assumable to someone, whether it's a veteran or not, for the future. If they're not a veteran, they've got to get a release of liability. Okay. So, but because VA buyers can buy with zero down, they commonly, over the years, across the nation, in the States, Puerto Rico, Hawaii, wherever they've been, they could buy a home with no down payment, and they can actually get in with no money down if a seller pays their closing costs. Now, what's your reaction when you hear someone like me say, hey, Dave, this person might need their closing costs paid? Normally that response in the eyes of the sellers is, I don't want to
back up a little bit.
I don't want to do that.
Yes.
I got a great home here. I don't want to pay any closing costs. But you know what? The veterans, a lot of them have been trained and coached by agents like me and other great agents in the market that, hey, this home is $300,000 and you want to get in with nothing down and it looks like a great property and the appraisers are pretty optimistic right now. You've got $7,000 in closing costs. Why don't we go offer the seller $307 and kick the price up and have the seller pay the closing costs, but by asking them to do that, we're going to reward the seller by building that back into the price. So let's answer your question. How can a seller take a buyer that they like and find out things from the buyer that will help them win the deal? And that's one of them. I'll tell you what is so impressive is I think we would both agree that military people who have served in the military, are typically very disciplined, or you probably had a drill sergeant just chewing you out all the time, right? So they're kind and good to do business with. They typically have financial affairs in place. They have good options for financing, like USAA and other lenders that are dedicated to helping service people. So first of all, find out if they're a veteran, because you probably got a pretty good buyer on the line.
Okay.
But don't shut down and just tell someone you're not going to pay their closing costs, okay? Listen to another potential buyer issue. Well, hey, Dave, I really like this home, but it's 30 years old. I'm really worried about this. I think I like it enough to make an offer, but I just don't know about this 30-year-old home. We did some research together, and it looks like the HVAC system, the heat and air, is 17 years old. And that really worries me because I know that's going to cost me a lot of money to replace it. You might want to offer a home warranty plan, one of these 1-year home warranty plans that covers the mechanicals, the plumbing, the electrical, the water heater, the HVAC, the appliances, with just a deductible they pay. So buy them a 1-year warranty. Buy them 2 years of warranty coverage.
Okay.
The policies are only about $500 for the base plan per year. What if you had an 18-year-old heat and air system and you were concerned that was going to foul up your sale? I'll go in and offer to spend $1,000 and buy 2 years of warranty coverage to pacify the buyer that if the heat and air system fails during that time period, it'll be taken care of. And then guess what? The buyer can continue to buy those warranty plans after the 2 years if they have concerns.
And they know that you're working with them. You're working almost for them. I'm helping
Right.
you put your mind at ease. I want to do everything I can to make the transaction easy for you. Thusly, they're probably more inclined to a little bit more maybe forgiving in other areas with that as well. Okay.
And you're listening to their concerns about older mechanical systems and their concern that they might have to cough up out of pocket after their down payment, negotiating their closing costs, maybe increasing the price to cover those closing costs. The buyer's concern is, how much more is this home going to cost me in the first year or two that I own it? Those warranty plans are a pretty good option for people.
Okay, that's great. We've covered 5 or 6 tips here. You mentioned you have 27 tips for getting your home ready to sell. Now, can they go to your website? Do they need to text you at 330-3000? Can they do that to get the list again?
Whatever's easier for them. You may be away from your home and a computer, and if you want to make this easy, we do have a written report. I could drop it in the mail to you. There's absolutely no obligation. If you'll just text at 330-3000, that's our office number that you can text to. Just text the words 27 tips and text that to 330-3000 and just put in your address. And I'll mail you that report on Monday. There's some great stuff there. Again, it's on property preparation. It's on negotiating, things we advise people to do, and things we might say, maybe you don't want to do this. Maybe you don't want to be inside the home for the showings. Maybe you don't want to object to closing costs. So it's a helpful report, and happy to offer that to our listeners.
And Wally, they can also go to your website. Is that correct? WallyHasTheBuyers.com.
Right. It'll be under the tab that says sellers. So there's a buyers tab and a sellers tab. So go down through those links and you can get that report, and you can look at it there if you want to online, but feel free to text, and glad to drop it in the mail to you.
So you can get those 27 tips. And of course, if you want to know the value of your home, you can text your address to that same number, 330-3000. That's 405-330-3000. Text your address, and kind of on a scale of 1 to 10, what you think your home is at right now. I think my home's a 7 out of 10 or an 8. And you'll shoot them back probably same day, hopefully?
Same day, today or tomorrow. Give you an estimated value for your home. No obligation whatsoever. Happy to provide it.
You're listening to House Talk with Wally Kerr. I'm Dave McKay, your host. And Wally, we have another guest this morning. We have Josh Gonzalez from American Capital Roofing. Josh, welcome this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, I have a couple of generic questions just about roofing, but first I want to ask you about these commercials I've seen on TV, I've heard on the radio recently about law firms that they think maybe the insurance companies didn't pay the claims properly, didn't pay as much as maybe they should have to homeowners. What do you know about that, or what does that really mean?
What my experience with that has been, in the world of insurance, you have an adjuster who comes out and does the evaluation of the damage. And just like in every industry, you have good, you have bad adjusters. And they're not always trained to hone in on one specific trade. They're trained in a barrage of certain degrees of, flooring, drywall, so forth and so on. And what happens is they may miss certain aspects of the estimate that need to be included that are not. And so that's where having a good contractor comes into play, of looking at the paperwork that is given initially and saying, hey, let's go back and get X, Y, Z in addition. Sometimes that's easier, sometimes that's harder. So I would say that's probably what they're discussing in that aspect, is going back and making that conversation easier than maybe sometimes it is with an adjuster.
Okay. And let's say I haven't even done anything to my roof after a storm came, because I feel like I'm just too busy to really worry about that. And come on, I'm looking at my roof. I walk out there. I don't see any holes in it. It must be fine. Now, is there a certain period of time, or should I say, how long are insurance companies liable to pay for after a storm?
First, I'd always say ask your insurance agent what that is for their particular company, as well for your particular policy. What has happened here in the past year with the state of Oklahoma is there's been a bill that has been passed that now requires a minimum of 2 years, 24 months, for the insurance carriers to basically insure the damage from date of loss, that is. So the day that the storm has hit your house, you have 24 months from that point forward to file the claim. Now, that's the minimum.
Okay.
So there are companies out there that will go beyond that, but per state legislation, it is now the bare minimum to do 24 months. So, and like you said, a lot of people come home, after a thunderstorm or a storm in general, and they don't ever give it a thought. And then 6 months, 8 months later, they either go to sell their home or they get a leak. And next thing you know, they get the roofer up there. Roof's got damaged from 6, 8 months ago. If they have a certain policy beforehand, that only covered them for a year. Once that year time expired, the company wouldn't cover it. And so either you're waiting for a new hail date to come in play, or you're potentially having to replace that roof out of pocket. But this new piece of legislation now covers the homeowners for 2 years with that insurance company.
Josh, you guys helped some of my customers, great customers, Scott and Robin, won't use any last names, but 2-3 years ago we did sell their home, and during the home inspection period, the buyer hired a home inspector, looked at the roof, and the home inspector said, this roof's gone. It's been hailed on. So called your partner, Alan. You guys went out and looked, and sure enough, it had so much hail damage. Unfortunately, their insurance company had a statute of kind of what they call a statute of limitations that just said you had to call us within 2 years after the hailstorm, and I won't say which insurance company it was. I think all insurance companies do a great job. Once in a while, you get some news you don't like, right?
Correct.
And so, son of a gun. I mean, the insurance company comes back and says, "You didn't call us soon enough, and we're not going to cover the roof." And it cost them. You guys did a favor. You really helped out. It still cost them $7,000 out of pocket to have those roof shingles replaced because it was gone. So, after a storm, I mean, a lot of people think, my roof's fine, I don't see any leaks on the ceilings. Mm-hmm. I don't see any water leaks. But that doesn't necessarily just mean a roof is okay, right?
Correct. Storm damage comes in all forms and ways. Your roof can actually sustain damage, and you could be good for the next 2, 3, 4 years before you can either, A, visually see something or something starts coming through into the home. And so it's always good whenever you have a severe storm come through, or just an annual inspection, to call a trusted contractor to come out and take a look at that. Kind of what I consider just the tune-up. Every year, have someone come out, take a look at your roof, the exterior of your home. If there's something that does need to be taken care of, you can address that at that time. And typically, it's going to be the cheapest at that state to do it. Again, it's always just good. I mean, the exterior of a home's exposed 365. So every single day, you're going to get either wind here in Oklahoma, you're going to get rain, you're going to get hail, sleet, we get it all. So the exterior of the home takes a massive beating over the portion of the year. It's always good just to give it that good once over every year.
I had a roof replaced years ago, and when the adjuster came out, I want to know how much truth there is here. Okay, there's a lot of people that know they've got, say, 30-year shingles in their home.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
But I had an adjuster come out, and he looked at the roof, and he said, "Wally," he said, "that may say it's a 30-year shingle, but," he said, "in Oklahoma with the wind and the heat and the ice and the sleet and the storms, a 30-year shingle is not a 30-year shingle in Oklahoma." And he said, I think, and correct me, maybe this is wrong, he said the average life of a 30-year shingle in Oklahoma is really about 17 years on the books. Is there truth to that?
I would agree with that. A lot of times, and it's just like with anything that's tested, you're doing it in a controlled environment. And so you take a roof, even though you put it on a makeshift house, and you put it inside of a wind tunnel. Well, is that really going to reflect what true wind's going to do? And then also, is it going to reflect what wind's going to do in Washington, the state of Washington, or here in Oklahoma, or so forth? Different regions have different climates. And so if a product is tested in a controlled environment and then you put it out in the real world, it may work perfectly fine in Arizona, but doesn't in Oklahoma. And so, again, I would say you're probably pretty close around that 17-year mark, just for, again, the wide range of climate that we have here in Oklahoma.
So it kind of boggled my mind when you said you have like 24 months after a storm. I might be someone that I saw the hail. It was all over the place. And maybe it was over the weekend. Monday morning, I'm calling someone because I want someone to look at it because I feel like I have to get it done right now. And I understand there's a little bit of a grace period, but I want to get it done because if there is damage, like you said, boy, it doesn't take long to where all those little stains start to appear on the ceiling. And then
Exactly.
I'm really freaking out. Do some roofers offer free inspections?
I can only speak for our company and saying that we provide free inspections. And again, It's because, like you said, you may have, 4 or 5 events over the course of a year. And if all it takes is 30, 45 minutes of my time to come by, take a look and make sure you're still covered with the most expensive asset of your life, I'm willing to do that. And so eventually over time, you're going to have a pipe jack that needs to be replaced. You're going to have a couple of shingles blow off here and there. And we'll just be there for you at that stage.
Oh, boy. He just said a bad word, Dave. Boy, that brought one up. What he called a pipe jack, or what I have called a roof jack. So back and forth here real quick, okay, to keep people interested. This cost me some money, okay? I'm a realtor. I've been a realtor 36 years. And Cindy and I, on our previous home, there was a tropical depression. Some of our listeners may remember 10, 12 years ago. Came over the middle of the night. I get up the next morning. We've got water stains on 3 ceilings in the house, and I'm talking about like a bucket of water dumped what looked like upstairs, and it just seeped through the sheetrock. And I had these huge stains. So there's these things called roof jacks or boot jacks, and they've got a little piece of rubber, and I didn't know these things wore out the way they did. Can you just talk real super quick about that and how that could cost a homeowner a lot of money in damage if they don't get these looked at once in a while, and maybe even how often they should be looked at?
Yes. So pipe jacks, everyone is going to have pipes that come through their roof line. And what this is for is HVAC or plumbing for their home. And so the way that it's roofed, there's a metal base with a rubber gasket that is attached to the pipe. And over time, just from degradation of the sun, it's going to deteriorate. And it varies for every house if you have tree coverage and so forth. But I would say on average between 6 to 10 years is the life expectancy on those. And like you experienced, Wally, if those go unchanged or unchecked, they'll allow water in and you get spots.
But yeah, they did. Yeah, and I had a lot of damage, and that came out of my pocket because that was a maintenance item. Correct. I think I had to pay for that. So if you're a listener, and I can just tell you this, if you're a listener and you've had a roof on your home for, Josh just said, 6 or 8 years, and you've never had it inspected, and you probably don't because you haven't had hail, you haven't had any roof leaks, but I can tell you from my standpoint, I didn't have it checked. We didn't have any hail for a long time. Those boot jacks wore out, and I had a lot of damage because I didn't have them checked. And so you're saying about every 6 to 8 years or so, maybe?
6 to 8 years, and again, like I said, following up what I said earlier, getting an annual inspection, those are kind of a high critical point for an inspection because, again, that's going to be one of the easiest places to get water intrusion into the home. Or if your roof's older than 5 years, I'd say go ahead and get those checked.
We're joined by Josh Gonzalez from American Capital Roofing. You mentioned we're in Oklahoma. Storm season is 11 months out of the year. So you're a busy guy. You're doing inspections, doing all this stuff. I'm calling you 5 times out of the year to come by and check it out. And that could be pretty invasive and time consuming to check out these roofs. So in short, without having to maybe climb up on someone's roof, is there a way to know if the home might qualify for a claim?
The easiest things I would say for a homeowner is, one, gutters. If you have gutters on your house, it's a very soft metal, and typically even hail damage that won't damage the shingles will dent your gutters. And that's something that's just a very easy key. If you're walking up to your home for getting the mail, you can just see if you got little dents in your gutters, that's an indication you've been hit by hail. Another good indication would be where your downspouts come down, you'll get the rocks from the roof, the granules. That means that the shingle has been hit with something and has removed those granules from a particular point. And if you get a large gathering of those at the base of your downspouts, that might be an indication something has happened to your roof. And the last one that I'd say is pretty easy for homeowners is if you go into your backyard and you have metal vents, whether those are the turbines that you have that spin around on the back of your house, or they may look like a box that's up there, those are typically made out of metal. And so again, it's another indication. If you can see dents in those, or if your turbine looks like it's just about to just circle right off the base, that's a good indication that you probably got hit with something.
I've seen some of those
there.
where they look almost warped.
Exactly.
And you're like, well, what happened to that? Okay, so you mentioned something, you're dealing with hail, and that's probably the number one cause of damage to the roof. Mm-hmm. And I've heard people talk about hail-resistant roofs or hail-resistant tiles. Tell me what that is. Is it cost-effective, and is it something that I should look into? And does it really exist?
So there are shingles that are manufactured better than your traditional asphalt product. So if you talk to your insurance agent, they're always going to ask you when you get your roof replaced, hey, have you ever thought about hail impact resistant shingles? And what that means is that these shingles are manufactured with a different asphalt than a standard. It has a little bit of rubberized asphalt to it. So it can essentially, for a very rudimentary way to explain it, it can absorb a hailstone and bounce it off without creating catastrophic damage to it. These are great for the state of Oklahoma because we get so much hail, large, small, dense, slush. And so it's, in theory, going to be able to last you longer than a traditional standard architectural style shingle.
Okay.
The biggest point, and again, always check with your insurance agent because it varies from company to company, is this could turn into a savings for you as a homeowner by lowering your premiums due to you putting on a roof that, like I said, can take a little bit more damage. So therefore, you're essentially limiting the liability of the insurance carrier.
Boy, it did for us, Josh. We saved about 20% on our insurance cost. I couldn't believe how much putting on that Class 4 shingle saved me on insurance. So a little bit more for the shingle. I think I figured the payback, it was going to pay for my entire roof within 5 years based on how much I was saving on premium. I know Dave asked a minute ago, too. You've got a way of identifying where storms went through. It's kind of interesting. You've got the ability to look at data and tell where storms came through and where the biggest hailstones were. If somebody called you up on the phone and said, hey, Josh, heard the show, would you look up my address? My neighbors said that we might have had some hail. I was at work. I didn't know, but it sounds like we had some hail in the neighborhood. Now I look, there's some granule loss. I see it coming out the gutters. Is there any way you can tell me over the phone, Josh, whether there was big hail inside my area or not? You have some of that data, don't you?
We do. We have a software system that we can plug in any address, and we can actually pull up a 3-year report on that home.
Oh, wow.
And it'll give us any indication that if it's a 1/4 inch or larger, it will show up on this report. So a lot of times, the smaller storms, 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, they'll be on there, and then you'll get the spike of 1.5 inches, 2 inches. And those are all indicated on this report that typically a lot of times we can hand to an adjuster and show, hey, here's the storm, and to give that date of loss that we were talking about earlier today, to say, hey, here's the day that it hit my home. And so now it's coming from a third-party source instead of just a roofing contractor coming up with a date.
Yeah, or a homeowner that just wants a brand new roof just because they want it.
Exactly.
So if you've got that data and you hand that to the adjuster, it's credible from a third-party source, and it helps the adjuster buy into the fact that there was a hailstorm and maybe this roof needs to be replaced, right?
Correct.
These
It helps
roof
trace the
shingles.
story.
If I'm getting ready to sell my home and I had my roof replaced 2 years ago, and maybe I do have a hail-resistant roof.
That's marketing, Dave.
Okay.
That's making a home worth more money. If you put in Wolf appliances, if you put in radiant heated floors in your bathroom, those are luxury items. If you've got a Class 4 shingle, that just means insurance costs are going to be lower. Every time I market a home that's got a Class 4 shingle, first thing I say in the public remarks, when you look at it online, you see it say, Class 4 shingles will typically save you a bundle on your insurance costs. So it's a great marketing feature. And these guys have done a great job for us. I certainly feel like there's a reason we wanted to have them on the show this morning.
Let's let him throw his number out there. It's Josh Gonzalez of American Capital Roofing. If someone has a question for you, they want to know about if hail went through, or they want to have you come out and look at their roof, how can they get a hold of you guys?
They can give me a call at 405-885-9061. That's also a number they can text me at if that's easier for them. Sometimes just shooting a text out is easier than giving a phone call, but that's the easiest way to get in touch with us. We also can go to our website, oklahomaroofpros.com, and you can track us down from there.
oklahomaroofpros.com. It's pretty easy to remember. Give me your phone number one more time.
405-885-9061.
Thanks, Josh.
Thank you.
Again, this is House Talk with Wally Kerr. We're here every Saturday morning at 7 a.m. on KOKC. Wally, you mentioned before we got started this morning that you had some really important information. You wouldn't tell me what it is, but you did have some important information today for listeners.
I do. So I got a call this week, Dave.
Okay.
And it had to do with property taxes. This was a listener who called in and said, wow, I just kind of got hit, and my payment is going up $60 a month for the next 6 to 8 months, maybe a year. He said, I guess my property taxes went up a lot, and they said they had to adjust my escrow account. And he said, so can you help me analyze this? He said, I'm on a fixed income, I'm retired, and I really can't afford the extra $60 a month. He said, I'm a budgeter, so help me understand what happened here. So I'll try to explain it as quickly as possible, Dave.
Well, this is good because this is something that recently came up in our household, and it's something that really I don't understand. So this is going to be great. Tell me about this.
And the first way to appeal to everybody's sense of why this matters is your house payment important to you? Do you care? Do you care if it goes up? I mean, I remember when I bought a car 20 years ago, and as I sat with the dealer, it's amazing how I was just so picky about what that payment was. So at first they were like, it's going to be $347 a month. And I'm like, no, that's too much. Well, how about $340? No, that's too much. Well, they finally got me in at $333. And for whatever reason, I didn't feel like I could afford $347. This is 30 years ago. Well, I didn't have any money. And then $343, $336, whatever it was, I finally agreed to $333. We all know what we're comfortable paying.
Yes.
So here's what's happened. Over the last 3 years, average values in the Oklahoma City area, the metro, fairly close to Oklahoma City area, let's say 20, 30, 40 miles, homes have gone up 25 to 35% in value. In some extreme cases, homes have gone up 40%. Here's what's interesting. In Oklahoma County, Cleveland County, Canadian County, Grady County, there's a state statute in really all of the counties here, whether it's Pottawatomie, Logan County, wherever you are. In Oklahoma, taxes can't go up after a home sells. So let's say a home sells in 2022, which is what happened to this caller. Bought his home last year, and his taxes went up because the home sold. So the previous owner had owned the home for 3 years, and the taxes were right at $2,100 per year for 3 years in a row. 1 year, it was just over $2,200.
Okay.
but the home was assessed by the county assessor for a value of like $167. Well, he bought the home and paid $233. And so the county assessor looks at what the home sold for, because they look and say that's a fair indicator of value, right? It was on the market.
Sure, yes.
Seller wanted $233. Buyer paid $233 because it was a home he wanted. And now all of a sudden the county assessor says, oh, I see. We were assessing that home for $167,000 the last 3 years, but it sold for $233. Now that it's sold, we can start all over again. And so we're going to assess that home at $233,000. Dave, his taxes went from right at $2,100 per year to $2,850 a year. So his taxes jumped $750 per year. His mortgage company analyzed his escrow account and said, you're not going to have enough money at the end of this year to pay your taxes. So the only way we can correct this is either A, you send us $700 right now, which he didn't have the money to do, or B, we're going to raise your payment. And it turned out it was $59 per month. So people who are looking to buy right now need to be really cautious. When you look online at realtor.com, Zillow, whatever it is where homes are advertised, it will typically tell you what the property taxes are. You probably need to do some research. So if the owner has owned the home 3 or 4 or 5 years, think about this for a minute.
I don't want to change.
Yeah, so let's talk about why it happens so easily right now when prices have risen so much over the last 3 years. We talked about values have gone up 25 to 35%
Yes.
over the last 3 years. But the taxes, if you own a home and you're living in it, after the year you purchase it, they can't go up or down more than 5% per year. In other words, the treasurer, county assessor, and the treasurer together, your taxes can't go up more than 5% unless you've made major improvements. Now, if you put in a pool, okay, they're going to raise your value, right? If you put in a big shop building,
Sure.
and that's now on your property, they're going to raise your assessed value. So if you went the last 3 years and your taxes only went up 5% per year, but over the last 3 years your home went up 30% in value, when it sells, the new buyer is going to be assessed the amount of their taxes based on the sales price. So you could be like, his name is Bill, no last names used. Bill called and said, wow, why did my taxes go from $2,150 to $2,850 for this coming year? And it's because there was an old assessment on the property that was just existing on that home. It hadn't moved up a whole lot over the years, so the taxes were lower. Then he pays $233 and the taxes go way up. So if you're concerned and if house payments are a little bit tight and you want to make sure that taxes don't jump up a lot, I can help any listeners. If you're thinking about buying, and if you're buying a home, now if it sold last year or the year before, Dave, that assessed value has changed. They can change the assessed value in the year that the home sells or the year that you purchased the home. If it sold last year or the year before, the taxes have probably already adjusted. But Dave, if you came to me today and said, I want to buy a home, and I see the last time this home sold was 7 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, those taxes are likely to go way up after that home sells because the assessor just hasn't caught up on value. They've been limited for years and years to not being able to increase those taxes more than 5% per year.
Two things. Okay, so I am going to take that hit when I buy that new home, and it's gone from $230 to $275, but after that, it's only 5%.
That's right.
Correct? So everyone's going to take that big hit, especially if the home hasn't been assessed or hasn't sold in like 5 to 10 years. Now, if someone lived in it for 2 years, I'll take that big hit, and then it's only going to be 5% is the max that it could go up or down.
You know, I got to be careful about the way I answer that question, because do you know this home that Bill bought where the taxes went from right at $2,150 to about $2,850, so his taxes went up $700. Dave, do you know that home was built in 2019, and he bought it in 2022? So in just a 3-year period, the assessor was still really far behind. So, be careful. What I would say is to anybody listening, and by the way, this was passed as Oklahoma legislation, and I believe in 1997, and it just said it would limit the amount of tax amount that could go up or down on any home to 5% adjustment, no less, no more, based on the tax year that it was sold in. But then they can change the year after.
Okay, so this is not in Oklahoma. I really want your live reaction to this. My family has a home out of state that was purchased in 1967. Are the property taxes still based right now in 2023 on what it was, the perceived value back in
1960? That's a good
67?
question. No, they go up. I really can't speak for out of state,
Sure.
but I can tell you that across the state, that legislation, again, was passed, 26 years ago. But I think it's just amazing that you can find a home that was built 3 years ago that someone bought, and they sell it
Yes.
3 years later, and a man buys it, and the taxes go up. Those taxes went up 33%. Think about that. $2,100, they went up $700. That's about 33% in 1 year, because the home sold last year. The taxes were allowed and statutory. They could do that and go up by 33% in 1 year because they were based on the sales price.
But that coincides with what you tell me every week about home values going up so drastically in the last 30 years, and how people have a lot of equity in their homes. If they've been in Edmond, Norman, all across the metro, I want to say it was like you told me the low 20s up to 35% possibly. I'm not going to hold you to that, but it was a lot in some of these surrounding cities around the metro. So I could see where that would jump up quite a bit.
Your numbers were correct. I've not seen really any area that was less than 20, 22, maybe 25% appreciation over the last 3 years. Certainly areas that have gone up 35, 40% in value. All I'm telling you is research taxes, and research and make sure that you understand it's always best when you go to your lender and you take a loan to find out what you really believe the taxes are going to be, and give that to your lender, so when they formulate how much money you're going to need for closing costs and how much your payment's going to be, they need to know what the taxes are going to be, not what they are right now as the home's being marketed. And number two is, just like we were talking to Josh a little while ago, call your insurance agent and get a quote on insurance and find out how much the insurance is going to be, exactly how much the taxes are going to be. Give that to your mortgage company, and that will allow the mortgage company to be more accurate in what that monthly payment's going to be. And the last thing I'd say, Dave, after you bought your home 6-7 years ago, do you remember if you actually went through and ever filed homestead exemption on your property? Do you remember what that is? Because most people don't remember.
You know, I've heard of that.
Okay.
I honestly don't know if I did or not. Is that bad?
It's kind
that I
no,
don't
no.
know?
You know what's funny? It's kind of a funny law, and I think it's from 1937 in Oklahoma.
Okay.
First of all, it's going to save you about $100 to $120 a year on your property taxes. So there's an extra $120 for
Okay.
you at the end of the year. It's an old law from 1937 in Oklahoma that says if you filed bankruptcy, if you got yourself in trouble and had to file bankruptcy, they can't take your home. And the law is funny. They can't take like a car and a cow and a pig and 3 chickens. I mean, it's just really funny.
I knew it before you said homestead, and I thought it had to do with livestock. But anyway, you're right. Okay,
It's
so
a
they
really
can't-
old law. It is. So, but if you file a homestead exemption, here's the simple caveat. Let's go back to Bill here, who bought his home last year. If Bill was living in the home before January 1st of this year, he gets to file that as his single homestead in Oklahoma. And when he files homestead exemption, that protects his home in the case of bankruptcy from creditors, okay? But it also saves him about roughly, based on his taxes, it's going to save him $115 a year. And that will help over time adjust his payment down. Now, when you buy a home, if it has homestead exemption on it, you still have to file it on your own to keep it. And if
Okay.
you don't go file for it, it's going to fall off. So if you go buy a home and homestead is on the property now, and then you forget and don't file homestead, now your house payment's going to go up about $10 a month if you don't go in and file it. So it's homestead exemption. Here's what I'd be willing to do. The county websites have a form online for homestead where they can file it. If you're listening now and you'd like to have some help with that, if it sounds a little confusing, just text the word homestead to 330-3000. You give me an address and I will get the form for your home and I will mail it to you. You can fill it out, and then you've got to mail it into the county assessor or the county clerk's office to get the homestead savings on your property. And you can even give me your address and say, do I have homestead now? And I'll check on that also. How's that?
This is House Talk with Wally Kerr from Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty Kerr team, here every Saturday morning at 7 a.m. You just threw out the text number 330-3000. You can also get more information at wallyhasthebuyers.com. Great information there as well. You can go to Wally's YouTube channel. You can listen to the podcast and all the different podcast platforms like Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, many others. Wally, what do they need to search to listen to your show on there?
Just go look me up as your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty Kerr team, or just look up Wally Kerr and you should be able to find me pretty easily.
This has been House Talk with Wally Kerr on KOKC.